This is lesson 9.4, which is multiplying special cases. So we're going to be looking at when we multiply different binomials that have specific traits, what ends up happening. And the first thing we're going to look at is something called the square of a binomial. So if you have the quantity a plus b and you're squaring it. So that's the same thing as a plus b times a plus b. That's the first big thing I want you to know. This is not a squared plus b squared. That's not what this is. This is a plus b times a plus b. So now if I take this and if I was to FOIL this special case out, the square of a binomial, I would get the first would be a times a, which is a squared. The outside would be a and b, so that's ab. The inside would be b times a, which is ab. And my last would be b times b, which is b squared. So what you should notice is that something special happens here. And what that is that the o and the I are the same. I get the same product. So I can write that as 2ab. So when I have the square of a binomial, I can write that as a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. This actually makes a huge shortcut for us because if you recognize that you have a square of a binomial, you don't need to FOIL it out. You can just use this rule right here, a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. So let's see what that actually means. So first of all, for this first example, x plus 8 squared, always I see this common mistake. People will write, oh, that's just x squared plus 64. No, that is not x squared plus 64. Do not make that mistake. This is x plus 8 times x plus 8. So you could just go through and FOIL this out, and you would get x squared, 8x, and 64. Or if you remember this rule, you can use that. So you would say, okay, this is my a, and this is my b. So I square my a, which is x, so x squared. Then I multiply 2 times a and b, so that would be 2 times my a, which is x, times my b, which is 8. 2 times x times 8 is 16x. And then your last one is plus b squared. Well, my b is 8, so 8 squared is 64. So that's the shortcut, and that's what we're going to do as we go through these. I'm not going to FOIL any of these out. I'm just going to use this rule. You could FOIL them, but again, this is a shortcut for you. You just have to recognize that these are all squares of binomials. So here's y plus 5 squared. My a is y, b is 5. So I go ahead and I write this out. A squared, that's y squared, plus the rule is 2 times a times b. So 2 times my a, which is y, times my b, which is 5, plus my b squared, which is 5 squared. So now I just multiply this. 2 times y times 5 is 10y, so there's my answer. And I didn't have to do any FOILing. Same thing on this one. My a is y, my b is 11, so I do y squared plus, now it's 2ab, so 2 times my a, which is y, times my b, which is 11, plus b squared, which is 11 squared. So I have y squared plus 22y plus 121. Now this last example I have here is a little different because I have my a is 2p. So when you do this one, you have to do the quantity 2p squared. Notice I put it in parentheses because I have to square all of it, plus 2 times 2p times 3 plus 3 squared. So 2p squared is 4p squared, and then I have 2 times 2p times 3 is 12p, plus 3 squared, which is 9. So there's our answer. Now these are all of them where we did addition. So what happens when it's subtraction? Well, it's almost identical except for, if you compare the two, I have minus, so I'm still going to have a positive a squared. I'm still going to have a positive b squared. But now, since it was minus, it's minus 2ab. And the reason why that is because when I FOIL this, so this is still a square of a binomial. I'm just doing subtraction here. My first is the a squared. My outer is a and negative b, so that's negative ab. My inner is negative b times a, so again, that's negative ab. We see that product that's the same there, and negative b times negative b is b squared. So when I look at this, instead of getting the positive 2ab, I get negative 2ab. And that's where this rule comes from. So if you have squares of binomials where we have differences, like 2 minus 3, t minus 1, so on, it's the same rule, only instead of doing plus, we just change this one to a minus. So this is d minus 3 squared. So I would do, using this rule, my a is d, so d squared minus, you've got the 2. My a is d, my b is 3. Plus, now my b squared, 3 squared. So now I have d squared minus 6d, because that's what the product of this is, negative 2 times 3 is negative 6, plus 9 squared. Again, can you FOIL this? Yeah, you can FOIL it, and if you want to check by FOILing, go ahead. Or if you recognize this, you can just use this rule. T minus 1 squared, so my a is t squared, or my a is t, so it's t squared because it's a squared, minus the 2 times my a, which is t, my b, which is 1, plus b squared, 1 squared. So t squared, this just becomes negative 2 times t times 1 is negative 2t plus 1. And again, here's one of those other ones where I have 9r minus 2 quantity squared. So this one, see how I put the 9r in parentheses? So 9r quantity squared minus 2 times my a, which is 9r, my b, which is 2, plus my b squared. 9r squared is 81r squared. Negative 2 times 9r times positive 2 is negative 36r, and 2 squared is 4. So there's my answer. Now what I would like you to do is try quick check 1, which is on page 513. Hit pause and then come back when you're ready. Okay, here are our answers for quick check 1. So we'll start with this one. The first one you had was t plus 6 quantity squared. So again, you're going to do your a squared t squared plus 2. It's plus because this is plus. So plus 2 times your a, which is t, your b, which is 6, plus your b squared, which is 6 squared. So you should have had t squared plus 12t plus 36, because 2 times t times 6 is 12t. 5y plus 1. Hopefully you remembered to put this in parentheses, because your a, it's a squared. So 5y squared, quantity squared, plus, it's plus because this is plus, 2 times 5y times 1, because that's your a and b, plus 1 squared. So this is 25y squared plus 10y plus 1. Now this next one, we had subtraction. So in our a and b both had a number and a variable. So we have 7m quantity squared, because that's our a squared. Now that's a minus, so this has to be a negative 2 here. So negative 2 times your a, which is 7m, times your b, which is 2p, plus, and now your b is 2p, so quantity 2p squared. So this one was tricky. It had a lot of different things in it. So this is 49m squared minus 28mp, because you have an m and a p and you're multiplying them, plus 2p quantity squared is 4p squared. And your last one, okay, last one, it was 9c minus 8, so you should have had 9c quantity squared minus 2 times your a, which is 9c, times your b, which is 8, plus 8 squared. So when that's simplified, it becomes 81c squared minus 144c plus 64. I need to get that so that everybody can see that. Okay. So that's what you should have had there. So let's look at our next special case, or how we can, no, we're not going to look at our next special case now. Now we're going to look at how we can use this for doing mental math. So we're going to start right here. I have 81 squared. So 81 squared, if I said, I want you to do this in your head, I want you to do it without a calculator, you might be like, I don't want to do that. But there is a trick to doing this that makes it easier, and it's using this rule of the square of the binomials. And the way that is to write 81, but rewrite it using easier numbers. So I can rewrite 81 as 80 plus 1 quantity squared. So what we have to do, what I have to do now, 80 plus 1 quantity squared. So what I have to do now is use my same rule, which was a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. So I'm going to do 80 squared which is easy. We know 80 squared is 6,400, plus, now my rule, 2 times my a, which is 80, times my b, which is 1, plus, and this got cut off, but it's 1 squared. So 80 squared, 6,400. 2 times 80 times 1 is 160. 1 squared is 1, so I get 6,561. So this next one, 59 squared, this one again, I'm going to look for easier numbers. So 59, I can rewrite 59 is 60 minus 1. So I have 60 minus 1 squared. And again, you might look at this and say 59 squared, I can't just do that in my head, but it's much easier if you break it up this way. So now I'm using this rule, a squared plus, only it's not going to be plus 2ab, it's going to be minus 2ab because this is a minus. So 60 squared minus 2 times the a, which is 60, times the b, which is 1, plus 1 squared. So that becomes 3,600 minus 120 plus 1, which is 3,481. So it makes it an easier way that you can tackle these numbers when they're squared by breaking it up into easier to manage numbers. So what I want you to try is quick check, I think it's quick check 3. Yep, quick check 3 on page 514. Hit pause and come back when you're ready. Okay, quick check 3. So here were the different ones you had for quick check 3. Okay, so first of all, you had 31 squared. So that one you should have broken up into 30 plus 1, quantity squared. So you would have had 30 squared plus, using our rule, 2ab. So 2 times your a, which is 30, and your b, which is 1, plus 1 squared. So you would have had 900 plus, this is 60, plus 1, so 961. 29 squared, you could have broken down into 30 minus 1. So this is actually the exact same thing, only instead of adding 60, you're going to minus 60. So you should have had 841. 98 squared, you should have broken that down to 100 minus 2. You could have done 90 plus 8, but then you've got larger numbers to work with, so 100 minus 2 works better. So you'd have 100 squared minus 2 times 100 times 2, because that's minus 2. Your a is 100, your b is 2, plus 2 squared. So it's 10,000 minus 400 plus 4, 9,604. See, all these numbers are easy to work with when you add and subtract them. You don't need a calculator. You can just do those. 203 squared, again, you might look at that and say, I'm not going to do that in my head, but if you break it down this way, it's much easier. 200 plus, you would break it down to 200 plus 3. So it's 200 squared, your a squared, plus 2 times a times b, so 2 times 200 times 3, plus 3 squared. So that's 200 squared is 40,000. 2 times 200 times 3 is 1,200, plus 9, so it's 41,209. Okay, so let's look at our next special case, which is something called the difference of squares. This one is actually really super easy, and if you can recognize it, then it will save you a ton of time. So a difference of squares, if you notice here, this is a plus b times a minus b. Why do we call them difference of squares? Because they're different. You have plus b, you have minus b. So if you were to FOIL this out, you would get a squared, you would get, so a squared, then you'd get plus ab, or I'm sorry, you would get minus ab, which is down here, plus ab for your inner, and then your last would be b times negative b, which is negative b squared. When these canceled, you get a squared minus b squared. That's the rule for difference of squares. So this makes this super easy. So if you have x plus 4 times x plus 4, instead of FOILing it out, if you just look at this and say, oh, this is a difference of squares because I have plus 4 and minus 4, then all you have to do is use this rule. You square your a, so my a here is x, so x squared, then you put your minus and you square your b. 4 squared is 16, so it's just x squared minus 16. You don't have to FOIL a thing out because you know that your inner and your outer are going to cancel if you were to do FOIL. So you just square your a, square your b, put a minus in between them, and you're done. And that's all there is to that rule. So let me find my last sheet of examples right here. So I have x plus 9, x minus 9. So this is really simple. Square your a, square your b, put a subtraction sign, x squared minus 81. A was k, b was 9, and that's it. 3c plus 7. This is one where you want to make sure and put this in parentheses because your a is 3c, your b is 7. So quantity 3c squared minus 7 squared, which is 49. So 3c squared, that's 9c squared minus 49. We got 49 because it was 7 squared. Over here, same thing. Make sure you put this in parentheses. Your a is p to the 4th, so it's p to the 4th squared, minus your b, which is 8. So 8 squared, so this is p to the 8th, minus 64. Notice it doesn't matter if it's plus minus or minus plus, as long as they're different, you can use this rule. So try quick check 4, which is on the bottom of page 514, and then hit play when you are ready. Okay, here were our 3 problems from quick check 4. So you had d plus 11, d minus 11. So your a is d, so it's just d squared. And then your b is 11, so it's minus 11 squared. So it's d squared minus 121. That's it. Over here, notice how I put these in parentheses. A is c squared squared. So c to the 4th. Minus, it's always going to be a minus, your b, so 8 squared is 64. Down here, 9b to the 3rd squared, so that's 81b to the 6th, because 3 times 2 is 6. We're going back to laws of exponents there. Minus w to the 4th squared is w to the 8th. Okay, now let's use that rule to see how we would use mental math. So right here, I've got 43 times 37. So if you look at these, both of these numbers are 3 away from 40. 43 is 40 plus 3. And 40 minus 3 is 37. So I can break this up. This would be a problem. You'd be like, I can do that in my head. But it's very easy if you recognize, wait a second, both of these are 3 away from 40. So once you recognize that, you would say, okay, I can use my difference of squares. A squared minus b squared. So my a is 40. So 40 squared minus my b, which is 3. So 40 squared is 1,600 minus 9, 1,591. Okay, so using that as an example, try there are 4 of these on quick check 5 on page 515 and hit play when you're ready. Okay, last ones to go over here. So this is how you should have broken these up. A, you should have done 20 minus 2 and 20 plus 2. So you just do, your A is 20, your B is 2. So 20 squared minus 2 squared, 400 minus 4, 396. B, both of those numbers were 1 away from 20, so it's 20 minus 1, 20 plus 1. Your A is 20, your B is 1, so A squared minus B squared, 20 squared minus 1 squared, 400 minus 1, 399. On C, you had 59 and 61. They were both 1 away from 60. So 60 minus 1, 60 plus 1. So A is 60, B is 1. So 60 squared minus 1 squared is 3,600 minus 1, which is 3,599. And your last one, very last one, you had 90 and you had 3. Both of those numbers were 3 away from 90. So 90 minus 3, 90 plus 3. So you had 90 squared minus 3 squared, which is 8,100 minus 9, 80,091. Okay, so that's it. Go ahead and go back and rewatch any parts that you need.